When I asked Benjamin why he made a family card for his in-laws, he laughed and said, "They're my family, so they should have one, right? You got a problem with that?" He added, "If you knew who helped you when you were alone, you wouldn't talk like that?" His confident tone surprised me. Was Benjamin always like this? He asked, "If you're grateful, you should do more for my family. Then you'll be part of it. Until then, you're like you're on trial." I had never heard of a trial in marriage before. Benjamin explained, and I was silent. "It means you're not fully part of the family yet. If you don't like it, you can leave any time. For now, our family is just the 6 of us." I was shocked, so I canceled our shared credit cards and immediately moved out. "Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm 30 years old. I draw pictures for a living, working from home as a freelancer. Before that, I designed stuff for a big ad company, but I started doing my own thing about 5 years ago. When I got married, my folks passed away in a crash when I was little, so my grandparents raised me. But I moved back to my parents' old place in the city center for college, and I've been there ever since. I met my hubby Benjamin at this Italian joint where he worked. It was a cozy spot with good food at decent prices, so me and my work buddies went there a lot. Benjamin, the charming waiter, caught everyone's eye, including mine. He was quite the looker. The manager even joked that some folks came just to see him, and I got why. Can't deny I was a bit of a fan myself. He had this cool vibe that stood out. We grew closer pretty fast, and before we knew it, folks were calling us a couple. Surprisingly, we ended up tying the knot. I don't remember much from that time. It's like I was in a bit of a fog. The next thing I knew, I was married to Benjamin, my husband. But I did love him, and I was genuinely happy about getting married. I left my job at the design company on good terms and started freelancing. Benjamin stuck with his gig at the Italian joint, working odd hours, sometimes late into the night. It got tough to juggle work, so I decided to go solo, something I'd always wanted to do. "That sounds smart, Elizabeth. It'll be easier for you, and it's great to keep doing what you love." Benjamin backed me up, and that's how we kicked off our married life. We weren't into big, flashy stuff, so we skipped the whole wedding hoopla and just signed the papers. Our families met briefly, and that was that. Benjamin went to work, and I held down the fort at home, managing chores and freelancing. Our schedules were all over the place, but we made it a point to have meals together whenever we could. It was simple, but it made us happy. I thought, yep, marriage is pretty sweet. About a year into our marriage, things took a turn for the worse. "My family wants to visit. Is that cool?" Benjamin asked one day. "Sure," I replied. I was looking forward to it. I'd only had a brief encounter with Benjamin's family before, so I figured this would be a good chance to bond with them. Having lost my parents early on, I always admired Benjamin's big family. But when they arrived, 5 of them, I was left stunned. "Hey, which room's mine?" his sister blurted out as soon as they stepped in. She's 35, 3 years older than both Benjamin and me, and works at a local store. Her abruptness caught me off guard. She seemed so different from the polite person I'd met before. Benjamin's 22-year-old sister was there too, but she stayed quiet, barely saying a word, just like when we first met. Following Benjamin's sister's hurried lead, I showed them to the guest room and Benjamin's parents to my parents' old room, the only one in Japanese style. I thought it'd suit them best. Once they settled into their rooms, Benjamin's sister declared, "Well, since we're all under the same roof now, you better start treating our family right." I was puzzled by her words, but when I turned to Benjamin for clarification, he simply chuckled in a way I'd never heard before. "Turns out they gave up their place and moved in here without telling me," he explained. "Sorry, our family home had to be vacated suddenly, and they had nowhere else to go." I wished he'd informed me earlier. I had assumed it was just for a day or two, not that Benjamin's family would move in. From the moment they moved in, Benjamin's family didn't hold back. All 4 of them expected me to handle everything while they did nothing, saying whatever they pleased. They made no effort to find jobs or a place of their own. When I asked about their employment, I got yet another surprise. "Oh, I quit that awful job at the supermarket," his sister confessed. She was working, but it turned out to be just a part-time gig. I'd assumed she had a full-time job given her age, but she admitted she hadn't held a steady job since high school. Benjamin's parents also had part-time jobs they gave up before moving in, and his other sister, well, was unemployed. She claimed to be a student, but that wasn't true. Why should I work when I'm part of a well-off family now? She reasoned. When I asked who she was referring to, I received another startling response. You received a hefty settlement and insurance payout after your parents' accident, and you don't even have a mortgage on this place. You can live comfortably without having to work, Benjamin's sister remarked, chuckling. I voiced my concerns to Benjamin when he returned home, but he erupted in a manner I'd never witnessed before. Everyone's exhausted from being suddenly uprooted. Give them some time to recuperate, or do you want to kick out my family, Elizabeth? I was stunned into silence. Then abruptly, Benjamin softened his tone. I'm sorry for yelling. It's been a tough day for me too. Can you please try to be a bit more understanding? Looking back, Benjamin was adept at manipulating situations with a blend of kindness and severity. But in that moment, I failed to see it. Agreeing to endure a bit longer, the situation with Benjamin's family grew more oppressive. They treated me like a servant at home and demanded money whenever they went out. We can't even look for jobs without some cash, can we? It's only fair. But if we can't find work, we'll just keep staying here, they reasoned. Reluctantly, I handed over some money, which they claimed to have used up without any luck in the job hunt. I suspected they never even bothered to search, but pointing that out would only lead to accusations without proof, and then Benjamin's entire family would lay blame on me for hours. Sharing my concerns with Benjamin didn't solve anything. Sorry, just bear with it a little longer. I'll talk with them, Benjamin would say, attempting to smooth things over. But as time passed, I felt like speaking up was futile. However, the frequency of their money requests gradually decreased, perhaps because Benjamin had a word with them, so the issue seemed to resolve itself. Of course, the money I had given them was never returned. Then, after about 2 months of enduring the situation, I noticed something alarming. Why is the credit card bill so high? Could it be unauthorized charges? Quickly checking the statement, I found that all the expenses were made with family credit cards. The purchases ranged from food and drinks to books, games, and even luxury brand bags and clothing. Each purchase was assigned a number from 1 to 6, indicating that 6 family credit cards had been issued. These credit cards were under my name, with Benjamin using the family cards. It seems like you'd handle this better, and it's easier to manage, PS, right? Can I UST it to you? He had asked, and I ended up taking charge of them. However, it turned out to be a scam. The cards had been issued without my knowledge. Benjamin of Scaml stopped requesting money because they could now make credit card payments and withdraw cash. When I confronted Benjamin about why he made family cards for his in-laws without consulting me, he chuckled and replied, Well, you complain. When they said they were broke, what else could I do? Plus, you know who supported you when you were alone, right? Can you speak like that to the important family of your benefactor? His bold tone left me speechless, unlike anything I'd heard before. Was Benjamin always like this? If you're thankful, you should do more for my family. Then I'll accept you as part of the family too. Until then, think of it like you're still in a trial period, he continued. I'd never heard of a trial period in marriage before. Seeing my silence, Benjamin pushed on. This means you're not officially part of the family yet. If you're not okay with it, you're free to leave any time. Right now, it's just the 5 of us in our family. Useless freeloaders, leave, he concluded. That's when I realized Benjamin's true character. I felt like all the color drained from my face. Stunned, I contemplated divorcing Benjamin. I began questioning why I even married him in the first place. At first, I was drawn to him simply because he was attractive. Like many other women, I was infatuated with his looks without any real reason. Then, on one occasion when I went to the restroom, Benjamin approached me. You seem different, Elizabeth. Kind of mysterious. Sorry, I shouldn't say that to a customer, he said. I was taken aback but intrigued, and I found myself paying more attention to him over time. Maybe that was his strategy to make me like him. Looking back calmly, it all adds up. I remember once a colleague joked that I was a wealthy lady living alone in a condo, and it was after that Benjamin started chatting with me, perhaps because he was interested in my wealth and condo. Honestly, Benjamin wasn't exactly my type, to put it nicely. He was more modern. If I'm being blunt, he seemed a bit superficial. I preferred mature men who spoke softly and seriously. Yet somehow, I ended up falling for Benjamin. I always found that perplexing, considering he was the typical handsome guy who could easily charm a woman, especially someone like me who was new to the working world and not accustomed to men. I fell for his tricks and ended up marrying him. Thinking about it now left me feeling frustrated and ashamed. I wanted to lash out and break things around the house, but I knew better than to act on that impulse. Instead, I resolved to seek revenge. To accomplish that, I had to endure the situation a while longer. Much like Benjamin manipulated me, I planned to gain control over his entire family. The condo we lived in was purchased by my father with a mortgage shortly after I was born. It wasn't very costly back then, but with the rapid development of the area and the addition of a new shopping center nearby, it's now considered a luxury residence. My parents, hopeful for more children, invested in a spacious condo. That's why there's enough space even with Benjamin's family moving in. However, despite its ample size, having Benjamin's family around proved to be a nuisance for me, especially while working from home. I endured it solely for the sake of revenge. As Benjamin's sister pointed out, there's no mortgage payment for this condo. When I was 4, both of my parents tragically died in a car accident. They were returning from my paternal grandfather's funeral when they collided with a speeding car on the freeway. I was supposed to accompany them that day, but I had caught the flu that was circulating and had a high fever. Consequently, my maternal grandparents came to the condo where we resided with my parents to care for me, leaving me as the sole survivor. The mortgage payments were covered by the group credit life insurance, so the only housing costs I incurred were the management fees and property taxes. Upon seeing the amount, Benjamin proposed contributing just a bit more than that to our household expenses. Since there's no mortgage, if I pitch in that much, we should be able to manage with Elizabeth's income, right? We'll each use our earnings for personal expenses. Sounds fair, doesn't it? He suggested. I agreed, thinking perhaps he had a point. Until then, I had been solely responsible for all expenses, so I believed his contribution would alleviate some of my burden. Looking back, it was naive of me, but at the time, I was blinded by my love for Benjamin and simply went along with whatever he proposed. Benjamin likely sees himself as the head of the household and the one providing for me, which is why he can so casually refer to me as a parasite. However, the reality was starkly different. I was the one footing most of the bills, covering expenses like utilities, groceries, social outings, and entertainment. Now, with 5 additional dependents in the household, managing with just my income was becoming impossible. I was eager to rid myself of this burden as soon as possible, but I feigned ignorance and endured it, gritting my teeth. I watched as Benjamin's family freely indulged in shopping sprees, reminding myself that I would have the last laugh. Then, 5 months after deciding to divorce, the moment to take action finally arrived. I'm exhausted. It's time to make a choice. It's either me or your family, I told Benjamin, presenting him with an ultimatum. He was taken aback, but I pressed on without hesitation. None of your family members lift a finger to help around the house. They just dump all their chores on me. You know I work from home. I'm not idly passing the time, yet they treat me like a freeloader and belittle me, claiming you're the one supporting me. I've had enough, I cried as I confronted Benjamin. His response was a smirk. Then you should leave. Didn't I warn you before? You're not truly part of this family yet. Giving up now means you haven't earned your place in it, he retorted. I felt shocked as I looked at him. What's surprising? If you can't tolerate my family, then it's you who must leave. And since I'm not to blame, I'll take this apartment as alimony, and I'll claim half of your savings as part of the property settlement. Ah, so that was his scheme all along. That's why his entire family had been hounding me, attempting to drive me away. I had suspected it, but hearing it articulated so plainly still came as a shock. It was someone I had once loved and married, but thanks to this revelation, I made up my mind. Fine, I declared, resolved to divorce Benjamin. But this condo belongs to me, and I'm not at fault either. What did you say? The grounds for the divorce are your family moving in without my consent and your family disrespecting me, I asserted firmly to Benjamin. He appeared taken aback by my outright rejection of his terms, not expecting such defiance. It was understandable, as I had always acquiesced to his demands since our marriage. Recalling those moments filled me with anger. I can't stand another moment with you all, so I'll leave now, but be prepared to vacate as well. This is ridiculous. This is our home. We won't leave. Ever heard of tenant rights? You can't just evict us from our own home, Benjamin shouted, ignoring my protests. I left the house and sought refuge at my grandparents' home. I divulged everything to them and requested shelter until matters were resolved. My grandparents were appalled by what I had endured and scolded me for not seeking their counsel sooner. With tears in their eyes, they embraced me. "I'm sorry, Grandma, Grandpa. I know I worried you, but I'll be all right now," I reassured them, forcing a laugh through my tears. The day after I left the apartment, Benjamin wasted no time in contacting me. "What's all this about? What mail are you talking about?" He inquired about the certified letter. I was impressed by how swiftly things were progressing. I had entrusted the divorce proceedings to a lawyer, and upon informing them of my departure yesterday, they had arranged for everything to be handled promptly today. "I'm not paying any alimony, and I'm not leaving the condo," Benjamin asserted. However, legally, he was obligated to pay, and he had no right to remain in the apartment. "What do you mean? The condo is jointly owned since we're married. If that's your stance, then compensate me for half its value to buy out my share," he insisted, making an absurd claim. "Continuing this discussion is all. Please communicate through my lawyer from now on," I stated firmly, ending the call. I anticipated he would likely call again the next day, but I had no desire to engage in further conversation that day. As expected, he rang me the following morning. "What's all this about?" He repeated the same line as the day before, displaying a lack of originality. "What mail are you referring to? Are the cards not working? What did you do?" "What I did was cancel it. That card belonged to me, and you were merely an authorized user on the family card. Remember?" Indeed, before leaving the house, I had transferred all the accounts linked to that card to another one and terminated it. Naturally, the family cards would cease to function when I canceled mine. "I was the one covering the expenses," I explained. "Yes, you covered the management fees and property taxes for the first 4 months only. It's not substantial, but I can deduct that from the alimony if you prefer," I mocked him. I heard some muffled shouting from the other end of the line. That's right, Benjamin had only paid the agreed amount for just 4 months. He had concocted various excuses about work and other matters, always finding a pretext to postpone payment. Then, he abruptly ceased all payments. If he forgot and assumed he was still paying, that's quite a lapse in memory. But I didn't concern myself with it anymore, as I'm severing ties with his memory holds no significance to me. That's the situation, so please reimburse your share of the living expenses I've been covering. I meticulously documented our household expenditures, which I'll utilize as evidence to equitably divide our savings. "It's marital property," he insisted. "Yes, understood. Let's divide it accordingly," I acquiesced. He concluded the call with a reminder not to overlook it. A few days later, he called again with the same inquiry. I realized they were not only deficient in memory, but also in vocabulary. "What do you mean by the division of shared property? Why is it 0? You must be swimming in cash from your parents' insurance and alimony," he alleged. Ah, so that's what they assumed. I patiently clarified that my pre-marriage savings were not part of the shared property, and since we had accumulated no savings during our marriage, it naturally amounted to 0. Don't accuse me of deceit. If you doubt my honesty, why not seek advice? Henceforth, kindly communicate through my attorney. I won't engage in direct communication with you any longer. Farewell, I declared, then terminated the call and blocked Benjamin's number. 1 month after my departure, Benjamin and his family finally vacated the apartment, not due to a change of heart, but because they could no longer sustain their lifestyle. Predictably, Benjamin's income alone couldn't support a family of 5 accustomed to lavish spending with my card. Asking them to tighten their belts was out of the question. I had intentionally allowed them to use the card for this purpose, knowing it would lead to this outcome. His family began badgering Benjamin for shopping funds, and when he refused, they resorted to pilfering from his wallet. Even in his anger, they blamed him for my departure. To compound their troubles, the utilities, electricity, gas, and water, were all disconnected. Of course, I had arranged for this since I had no intention of residing there. Benjamin attempted to have the utilities swiftly reinstated by phone, but since the house was in my name, no one else could restore them if the owner had ordered their termination. During the scorching summer and early autumn, his family struggled to endure the sweltering heat and eventually vacated the condo. Their destination, I neither knew nor cared. Benjamin endeavored to persist until the end, but he ultimately capitulated due to the absence of electricity and the inability to bathe. The divorce proceedings progressed more rapidly than anticipated, not because Benjamin had a change of heart, but because of his blunders. He betrayed our marriage by pursuing someone else, perhaps assuming he could swiftly remove me from the picture. He boasted about owning a luxurious downtown apartment, using it as bait to attract younger women. Astonishingly, he engaged in such behavior with his family present, but it wasn't out of character for him, so they turned a blind eye. Before departing, I had discreetly installed cameras throughout the house, capturing all the evidence. Perhaps he underestimated me, but his disrespect was undeniable. He brought his family into my home without consent, racked up expenses on a family card, and left me with a bill, owing me and engaged in infidelity. I demanded significant compensation and alimony for these transgressions. When Benjamin saw the amount, he visibly paled and begged desperately for reconciliation. However, I harbored no such intentions. Aware of his inability to pay, I pressured him to borrow as much as possible from his company and seized whatever assets I could. When I threatened legal action for fraudulent use of the family card, he reluctantly agreed to my terms. I can only hope he makes diligent efforts to repay his debts. The divorce is now finalized, and I am currently residing at my grandparents' place. I haven't decided what to do with the apartment yet. While it held sentimental value as an inheritance from my late parents, given the circumstances and lack of memories associated with it, I may opt to sell it. On the professional front, my career as an illustrator is flourishing. I may soon live independently again, but for now, I'm content working from my grandparents' home. I'll continue to rely on their support for a little while longer, before forging ahead with renewed determination. In the future, I'll be more discerning in choosing a partner, prioritizing qualities beyond mere attractiveness. I hope to find a life partner with whom I can share my journey. Let's conclude the story shortly now. With the divorce finalized and my path forward clear, I focused on rebuilding my life. The condo, once a symbol of family inheritance, became a mere asset to be sold. Its walls echoed with memories tainted by deceit and betrayal, prompting me to seek closure elsewhere. Turning to my career as an illustrator, I poured my energy into creative endeavors, finding solace in the rhythm of brushstrokes and the vivid colors of my imagination. From my grandparents' home, I charted a course toward independence, buoyed by their unwavering support and the lessons learned from my past. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I emerged from the shadows of my former life, embracing the freedom to pursue my dreams without compromise. With each stroke of my pen, I penned a new chapter, one defined by resilience, determination, and the unwavering belief in my ability to shape my destiny. And so, with renewed determination and a heart full of hope, I embarked on a journey of self-discovery, knowing that the challenges of the past had only strengthened my resolve to embrace the future with open arms. Thanks for watching. How did you find the story? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more awesome stories like this. Your feedback and support mean a lot.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? "I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hope to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.